started. I'm Rebecca, and set myself up here. We're really excited to have you in this discussion on how to be a no-brainer tech hire. Thank you all for coming, and we're really excited to show and share what we've learned over the past few years at Flatiron School. Before we get started, I just wanted to mention that we'll be taking questions the whole webinar, and we'll leave some time to answer them at the end. So feel free to type questions into the chat, and we'll take as many as we can when we get to the end of the presentation. Cool. So hi guys, I'm Rebecca. Full disclosure, could not get my webcam to work, but here's a picture of my face in the absence of your seeing it the whole time I'm talking. I've been leading the career services team at Flatiron School since 2013, which means I've had the great privilege of being around for almost 1,000 job searches. And over the years, we've learned through watching students be successful and coaching them through these processes, what makes a really great hire, what makes a great candidate, and what makes a candidate that hiring managers are really excited about. And over the years, we've built a really robust set of recommendations and actually a whole team around supporting our graduates' job searches, and we're here to share some of that information and some of those tips with you today. From some strategies students have used to be successful in the past to what it actually looks like to work with Flatiron School's career services team. But before we get into the meat of it, by way of introducing myself a little bit further, I'll just share the story of my first job search, and perhaps a little bit of a winding path as to how I got here to this moment, sharing these tips with you guys. So I was an English major in college, and I desperately wanted to be a writer after graduation. So I applied to a lot of jobs my senior year, as you do. I didn't get any responses to any of my job applications, as you do. And in the hopes of building up my professional portfolio, as summer was fast approaching and I was about to go out into the world without a job, I took on a freelance writing gig. During school, during my last semester of college, I think I was getting paid $20 a blog post to write reviews of lipstick and perfume and things like that. And while I didn't hear back from any of those cold applications, I did receive a full-time job offer for a salary job that started a week after graduation with the company for whom I was doing the freelance writing. You'll see this theme begin to emerge as we talk about tips that we suggest grads use as they're looking for a job, and tell some stories of graduates who've been successful in their job searches with us in the past. So that's me, and a little bit about our agenda today. We're going to talk a little bit about our outcomes and our outcomes reporting. We're going to talk about what actually is a no-brainer hire, and then related, making the most of your interview, positioning yourself as a no-brainer hire when you're going through your own job search process. And give a few examples of students who've gotten creative with their job search and found success with that. And then we're going to, of course, stop for questions. And again, feel free to type them into the chat. We'll collect them and answer them at the end. Okay. Outcomes. So since 2012, Flatiron School has been leading the industry in defining what an outcome means in this industry and transparently reporting outcomes on every single one of our job-seeking students who comes through the school. Historically, 98.5% of graduates have gotten jobs in about 6 months. And we just this week released our third outcomes report audited by a third-party CPA that was outcomes for exclusively our online students. So the first set of online students to graduate from our online web developer program And the job placement rate for that program was 97%, with 100% of those students accepting roles in software engineering. We're extraordinarily excited about that, and if you want some more detailed information or to download that report, you can do it at outcomes.flatironschool.com. Okay, so how do we get there? What makes a no-brainer hire? What is a no-brainer hire, and what do we do to support students, and what can you do as a job seeker to put yourself in that 98.5%? It turns out it's pretty straightforward, but it is hard, which is to say we know what it takes to get hired. We know what it takes to position yourself as an amazing candidate, but it's a lot of work. And so we'll start with some high-level suggestions, just getting into the hiring manager's head, right? So a job search is really a discussion, a two-way conversation with a company, most likely a hiring manager or a recruiter and a hiring manager, about can you be a good fit for this job, right? So put yourself in the hiring manager's shoes and think about what it is that they are trying to figure out when you're in that interview. They're really trying to figure out three things. Can you do the job? Will you more broadly add value to the team and the organization? And can you learn fast enough to do the job that will be the job in a year and require skills that you don't have yet or we don't even know you need yet? So those are really the only three things the hiring manager is trying to understand when you're going through an interview process. Can you do the job? Can you more broadly add value to the team? And can you learn fast? We'll talk a little bit more in detail about this when we talk about making the most of your interview. But again, when you're going through a job search process, try to match your activities and what you're presenting to those three goals for the hiring manager. So showing you can do the job means coming in with a portfolio that's relevant to the work that you want to do. If you're a new developer, work hard to create a project that not only has clean code on GitHub, but is deployed live, and maybe do a video demo of yourself using your product and explaining the interesting features that you built. Even if you're coming from a different career and don't have professional experience as an engineer, that set of collateral can show a hiring manager that you can do the job. Also come prepared with a narrative about why you're committed to this career and this job. Again, especially as a hiring manager interviewing you for a role that you've never done before, that's really helpful to show why you can do this job as opposed to just the job you did before. I'll go into more detail again about this in a couple slides, but there's a ton of ways to show you can add value to a team during your interview process. One of my favorites is to just stop and ask the person you're talking to, what are your biggest challenges? You know, I'm a job seeker, so my goal is to find a job, but I want to be valuable to you in this company. Is there anything that you're struggling with right now? What's on your mind? And find a way to address that. And then finally, that you can learn fast. As we know, the technologies that you're learning today won't be the technologies that are the new thing in 5 years. And oftentimes, companies will choose new or different technologies in which to build, given what the best tool for the job is. Your education won't precisely match the languages that you need to use. So one of the things the hiring manager is trying to figure out is, can you learn the tools that you need really quickly? And again, we'll talk more about some ways that you can demonstrate that in a couple of slides. Ooh, in 4 slides. So taking a break from that for a second, you know, we know what a hiring manager is looking for, and we know some of the ways that students can demonstrate it. So how does this translate into your work with Flatiron School if you're a student and you're going through a job search with our career services team? Maybe starting with, what is the career services team? What do we do? There's really 3 prongs to what we do on this team and how we work with students. One of them is career search curriculum. We create and maintain essentially a body of best practices that can guide you through all the steps of kicking off and running a job search. If you're a full stack web developer student, you already have access to all this content in Learn. If you switch tracks to the career prep track, you'll see everything that I'm talking about. It turns out there are really specific things to do when, say, you're kicking off a set of networking activities. There's a way to email someone for a coffee meeting. There's a way to run that coffee meeting. And what the career search curriculum does is walks you through the things that we've learned and that students have learned work best for each of these parts of your job search. Second is career counseling. Again, students in our online web developer program get matched with a career counselor who's with you from about 3/4 of the way through the program for the next 6 months after you graduate or until you find a job. And I'll talk in a second about our career services commitment, but what that person is there to do is really provide a sounding board and feedback on everything that you're being guided through in the career search curriculum and in our career services commitment. There's a pretty specific set of stuff that we know make up the best practices, but there's some nuance in all of it, right? Like these are people processes, and these are things that are not cut and dry and the same in every situation. So a lot of what your career counselor is there to do is guide you through how to implement the best practices in a way that makes sense for your job search and the specific situation you find yourself in with any given employer or conversation. The third thing the career services team does at Flatiron School is be in touch with employers. We've found that one of the most important things that we can help students with is to educate employers about what a Flatiron School education is, why it's valuable to have a graduate with this kind of experience on your team, and sometimes even create ways for employers and students to connect directly. So I mentioned the career services commitment, and we're sort of going deeper and deeper in levels of detail here about exactly what you need to do to be successful. The career services commitment is sort of the rule book, the playbook for what students need to do to run a good job search. You can see the full career services commitment at this website here. But the top things that we ask of students through that commitment are really 3 broad buckets of tips. One is probably first and foremost, contact real people and start real conversations with them. Our commitment actually asks job seekers have at least 8 specific contacts with 8 specific people each week while they're job seeking. And that means, you know, make sure you have a pipeline full of discussions going with people who are relevant to your job search and to your industry. And not all of them will turn into jobs, but the idea is to make enough real connections with people that, you know, whether someone submits you for an interview at their company as a next step, or someone connects you to their sister whose husband knows someone at a company that makes sense for you, you're beginning to do some real robust and effective networking that eventually leads to interviews and ultimately a job. So one of our kind of most robust requirements, one of the clearest requirements is that graduates be starting conversations with real people in the industry. The second is to be transparent and communicative about what's going on with you. As I mentioned earlier, one of the most valuable offerings from the career services process at Flatiron School is your career counselor. And we've seen time and time again that the more transparent students are with us about what's going on, what conversations they're having, and this conversation seemed weird, I'm not quite sure what to do with this one, the more we're able to help and guide them through successful resolutions of those conversations. And And the third one is to be a great job seeker, right? Demonstrate that you can do the job and that you can keep learning by doing things like maintaining an active technical blog, creating and improving side projects while you're job seeking. These are things that will set you apart as a job seeker. And our goal for each and every one of you is that you are an absolute no-brainer hire. So we actually require that our students, every single one of them, do things that set them apart and make them better than the majority of job seekers. And that includes continuing to code, blogging about what you learned, and even doing meetup presentations or presenting publicly about things that you've built or challenges that you've overcome with your coding. Okay, heading back to your job search and kind of, again, we've talked now about some general best practices. What is an employer looking for? How does Flatiron School support our graduates to make sure that they're doing those things? Now let's talk about some specific ways to demonstrate these best practices and execute them in your own interview process. So we talked a little bit about this, but put yourself in the hiring manager's shoes, again, before every interview. It's easy to think about what's my experience, what's my process and story, and what have I recently learned. A really key component to being successful in an interview is to take a second, step back from that and think, what does the hiring manager want to know about me? If I'm this person sitting in the other seat, what are the most important things that I would want me to demonstrate so that I would get through this interview in a positive way? Using the interview as a chance to learn something is another one of our very favorite tips. So you might be in a technical interview and think, man, I bombed that. That went really poorly. I didn't answer the question. I didn't even get through the problem. And you're thinking, I failed. A way to really turn that around is to say, okay, I'm going to go home. I'm going to solve this problem. I'm then going to create an additional complexity to this problem and solve that. And I'm going to send it over to the hiring manager and say, you know, I was thinking a lot about that interview. I was really curious about the solution to the problem. I know I didn't quite get there in the conversation, but I really wanted to learn more and dig deeper. So I've created this solution that I wasn't able to come up with in the room, but went home and thought about, and I'm submitting to you now. And I actually also had this additional complexity for the problem that I thought of. I solved that one too. If you do something like that, if you use the interview as a chance to really teach yourself something new, and then demonstrate that to the hiring manager, you can go from having quote unquote failed your technical interview to actually being heads and shoulders above any candidate, including someone who solved the problem in the room and then didn't follow up afterwards. Like, who would you rather hire? I'd rather hire the person who demonstrated their curiosity and did a bunch of extra work to show how committed they were, not just to the job, but to learning something as part of the process. Another tip for making the most of your interview, and we'll talk about some students who've done stuff like this in the next couple of slides, is find an opportunity to contribute. A little bit earlier I said, you know, one of our favorite tips is to ask, to tell students to ask the hiring manager, what are the challenges that you have right now? What's most on your mind? What are the hardest problems you're trying to solve? A way to make yourself an absolute no-brainer and stand out from the crowd is to then take those problems or challenges and solve them for the hiring manager, right? Actually contribute to the company. That's not to say your solution needs to be something that they're going to use or perfectly executed or, you know, make the most business sense. Of course it won't. You don't have all the context you would need to accomplish that. But show that you've thought critically about the problems and challenges this company faces, and show that you've done some work towards addressing them. That demonstrates that you're going to be a great member of the team, and you're going to be someone that not only is doing the tasks that are assigned, but also thinking more broadly about how you can be additive to the organization. Okay, examples. Gave you guys a lot of information about ways broadly, sort of at a high level, to demonstrate that you're a great candidate, to make yourself a no-brainer hire. 4 examples of students who've actually done that. So Lucas was one of our online grads, and what he did when he was super interested in a company was actually looked at their GitHub account and submitted a pull request to their code. This gets at contributing, right? Show you can contribute to the problems the company is trying to solve. As opposed to just going through an interview process and doing what was asked in the interview process, Lucas made it his business to add value to the company during the process. Again, not only that, but using the skills that he knew they were looking for with this particular job. And he got this job. I'm pretty sure all the students we're about to talk about got the job. Yes, they all got the job that they were gunning for in these examples. Another one is talk about demonstrating that you can learn really fast. Kavan was interviewing for a job with Kimi, and so what he did during the interview process was went and took a look at their APIs and actually used their technology to build a project. Now, this wasn't necessarily a project that they had a business need for, but this demonstrates really clearly that Kavan could learn fast and was excited to do so. Going beyond the technical interview, Kristen really effectively put herself in the hiring manager's shoes during the interview process for the job that she ultimately got and asked, what are the problems you're facing? What are you concerned about? And the company she's working for was in kind of not a major metro and was concerned about finding talent that was excited to be where they were located. So she thought about that challenge, she thought about that problem and thought, man, it's pretty clear what I can do to make myself a no-brainer for this job. I can show that I'm super excited about relocating to the city where this company is. So she researched the city. She found a bunch of really interesting things to do there, and stuff she was excited to take advantage of should she get the offer and be able to move. And she wrote a blog post about it. Reasons I'm excited to move to this new city as a member of this new team. And needless to say, assuaged that company's concerns about her desire to relocate, and she got that job. Finally, so this is also about kind of showing you're excited to learn and can do the job. So Anna had gotten a contract gig based upon some of the project work that she's done. One of the examples in her portfolio, she had discussed with the hiring manager in her first set of interviews and got a job for a short-term contract right out of Flatiron School. When that contract came due, there was another contract at the company for an even longer-term job that was available. And instead of building something new or relying just upon the great work that she'd done for the company so far, she decided to make herself a no-brainer, went back to the project that originally got her the job, refactored it, added new features, and said, look at all that I've learned in the few months that I've been here. I've improved this project that originally got me hired and got the new contract offer and that longer contract job. So there's a lot you can do to kind of think creatively around making yourself a no-brainer. And a lot of work that we do in partnership with our students to kind of figure out and execute what that is. I've been talking for a long time, so I'm going to stop now and take some questions from you guys, and you can keep typing them in kind of as we're going along.
Great. So we have a question. Do you know how long people tend to stay in the first roles they get coming out of Flatiron School?
Oh, that's a great question. So around half of our graduates will take full-time salaried jobs as their first position, and around half of them will take contract, internship, or apprenticeship gigs. And the way that we define that is a limited term job that's paid, of course. And so I know that, based on that data, around half of students will take a 3 to 6 month job as their first position and then go on to a longer term role. The half that are in salaried jobs, we don't have any specific data around how long they're there. We always recommend that students stick around for at least a year, and have actually seen a lot of students get promoted within 8 to 12 months in their current gig.
Great. Does Flatiron School have any hiring partners? If so, can you name a few examples?
So, I'm not quite sure what you mean by hiring partner. We work regularly with several hundred companies who we're in touch with for a variety of reasons that I kind of alluded to earlier. They all fall under the bucket of evangelizing for you guys. So some of those relationships look like companies saying, hey, we have a position, we think a Flatiron grad could be a good fit. Do you have anyone in this city who's looking for a job? And we'll connect you directly with that company if and where relevant. Some of those relationships look like, we're a company who's interested in getting more involved in communities of diverse engineers. Is there any way that we could do a talk or write a blog post or otherwise connect with your students so that they know that we're an option? So you can head to flatironschool.com/employers to see a bunch of the companies where grads have been hired and that we're in touch with quite regularly. But suffice it to say, probably a lot of companies that you've heard of we are in touch with, and the way exactly that relationship works really will depend on the company and their needs at any particular point in time.
Do these tactics apply only for software developers or for other job roles too?
That's a really good question. I would say that these tactics apply to any job. I've talked specifically about software engineering because, one, that's what we've got the most experience in, and two, it's kind of what was advertised on this webinar. But that very first anecdote that I told about being a writer and wanting a writing job and applying and not hearing back, that goes for every job. Most jobs, we've seen here, I know through my personal network, I know through my personal experience, are not gotten through applications online. So, when I'm kind of having conversations over drinks and giving this advice more broadly, I would say it applies to absolutely any field. I think we're lucky in software engineering and as technologists that we have the opportunity to so clearly demonstrate a portfolio of relevant work. And contribute based upon things like open source code and APIs that we can find freely available. So, if you're a salesperson, you might have to think a little bit harder and more creatively about how to employ these tactics for your own job search. But I absolutely wholeheartedly think that this is the way that everyone should look for a job. And with enough kind of elbow grease and grit, you can make it work for any industry.
Do you have success with online students getting jobs in smaller tech areas, such as Pittsburgh, Columbus, Cleveland, etc.?
We do. Great question. So you guys might know, depending upon kind of how familiar you are with Flatiron School and our online web developer program, that it comes with a job guarantee. And what that says is that if you job seek according to our standards of a robust job search, that is, you follow our career services commitment, and you don't get a relevant job offer within 6 months, we'll give you your tuition back. And that doesn't have location constraints. Actually, it does. You have to be in the US. But within the US, that doesn't have location constraints. And the reason for that is we've seen this over and over again. Every company is now a technology company. You'd be hard-pressed to find an American business that does not use any software, whether that's your mom and pop grocery store that has a Squarespace website and needs someone to update it, or whether that's Under Armour becoming a fitness tracking company through an acquisition and now employing tons of software engineers. Every company needs engineers, and absolutely the kinds of work that you're doing at different kinds of companies will vary a ton, but companies all over the place are hiring for these kinds of roles. I'll kind of wrap up because it's top of mind, because I was thinking about this just earlier today with a couple of students who've gotten jobs in, quote unquote, non-tech centers, areas of the country that are not, San Francisco metro area or the New York metro area. We have one student in Fargo, North Dakota, who got an amazing job before even graduating from Flatiron School at one of the top tech employers right in her city, and transitioned out of a career in academia and into a software engineering career within just a number of months, and right after starting her job search. We have another student who just got a job in Missouri, Columbia, Missouri, at a company that's actually a digital marketplace for heavy machinery. So a company that's kind of taking advantage of one of the industries in their area and using technology to make it more efficient, more powerful, and that's where our graduate is now working. We've had students get jobs kind of all over the country since we launched Learn in late 2015. So yes to your question.
Great. So for the students that have short-term positions, does Flatiron School help them find work after they leave this short-term position or get a second job?
We have a process in place for, one, what counts as a job. So in order for something to actually qualify as a job to begin with, it needs to be at least a month long, full-time, and paid. So if you take a contract gig that's 10 hours a week following graduation, we will absolutely encourage that. Any work that you get paid to do as a developer makes you more valuable and gives you more leverage as a developer, but that wouldn't count as a full-time, as a job. So that's kind of the first thing, is a job needs to meet certain requirements in order for us to consider it a job. And second is, yes, when students come back to us after kind of a short-term position, or frankly even for career advice after maybe like 2 or 3 years out in the market, we'll also connect them with a career coach if they're interested, who can help them kickstart their second, third, or fourth job search and take advantage of the resources that they had as a new grad to kind of find that next step in their career.
Great. So what industries do students land jobs with? Is it more financial industries, as we're located in New York City?
No, it's all across the board. At flatironschool.com/employers, you should be able to see a pretty diverse set of companies, from fintech to startups to the Goldman Sachs and BlackRocks of the world, to agencies and dev shops. So where students get a job is really dependent upon the interview that goes well and where they meet people that they think they can work with, who think that they can work with them. We encourage students to be really open-minded about the kinds of companies that they're going to work with following graduation, because in the same way that you might not think that Under Armour needs developers, you might not even consider kind of working for a retail clothing company following your experience here. So the short answer to your question is all across the board. New York has a really robust tech scene, but we've learned that that's the case in a lot of other areas of the country as well. And those kind of traditional companies that you would think are hiring are, but there's also a bunch of other sort of surprises about where people can get really great jobs as engineers.
What are some of the biggest no-nos you've seen or heard during interviews?
I guess just the opposite of everything that I said, right? So we encourage students to be transparent and communicative with us and with employers, right? So something that we wouldn't encourage is like hiding conversations or interviews from employers. We encourage students really to put as much as possible into these searches. And I think that that's the biggest thing. So when you're let's say you're a salesperson, right? You need to like fill your funnel with deals and opportunities and hope that a bunch of them close. Not all of them will, but the more the better. It's really different for finding a job. You want to fill your funnel with opportunities. You want to open a lot of conversations to give yourself the best chance of success, but it only takes one. And that one is going to be a big investment for you and a big investment for the employer. So we really encourage students to put a lot into the conversations that they're having, especially as you kind of get later and later with the company, and not just do what's asked of you in the interview process. You know, I think there's a perception in job seeking that the interview process is like this set of hurdles you have to jump over, like a structured set of activities. And after you do them, if you pass, you're granted a job. That's not really how it works. The job search is winding and not straightforward. And a company might present to you a bunch of rules you're supposed to follow and kind of activities you're supposed to do, but I think the big secret of being a great job seeker is the good stuff happens when you go outside of that. So, you know, I think being open to investing in your search is like the biggest tip that I would give. Think hard about what extra and what else you can do, and don't feel constrained by the process that's kind of set out before you by an employer. Oftentimes the best thing you can do in these job search processes is just make it easy for the employer to say, oh, well, she just stood out, so she's the obvious choice. And that's what we mean by being a no-brainer hire. So I don't really like to talk in like the negative, but I think, you know, a great job seeker, a great job search process is doing a bunch of stuff that you weren't asked to do to prove that you're the obvious choice. A less good job search process would be just doing the bare minimum.
Great. So do you have any tips for tracking interviews and just contacts during the job search?
Great question. So at Flatiron School, we've actually built a tool that students get access to when they begin their job search called your job search tracker. And this is it's a really complicated Google Doc, and it's sort of like software, where you'll put all of the activities that you do as a job seeker, and our tool will tally against what you're supposed to be doing each week, which is to say, it's really important to track your progress. You know, when I'm running any kind of process like this, I will keep really, really clear tabs on every person I've talked to, every conversation we've had, the date, and the next step. And I think it's important as a job seeker to know that it's always your responsibility to initiate the next step. The ball is never not in your court because you don't have the leverage. So if a company hasn't gotten back to you, it's your job to get back to them within a week. If you're waiting on an offer but it hasn't come yet, it's your job to check in and suggest a salary range. You know, at Flatiron School and for students doing a job search with us, we provide essentially a light CRM for tracking your job search, but really any spreadsheet will do, just as long as you have a way to understand exactly the conversations you have going on, exactly what happened in past conversations, and make sure that you know when it's your responsibility to move the ball forward with any of those discussions.
Do you see these students graduating and ultimately starting their own companies afterwards?
Is there any more to that question? We do. Yeah, a lot of students come here intending to be entrepreneurs. Probably 80% of our students are looking to switch careers and get a job as a software engineer at a company. But we do have a significant number of students who come here wanting to start their own companies. And The goals for using their Flatiron School skills to do that might vary, but we've had students do everything from come through Flatiron School and then have the skills to build a prototype upon which they launch their startup, to come here and intend to then hire a technical lead when they graduate, but use the skills that they've learned to understand, roadmap discussions, more thoroughly and thoughtfully vet technical talent themselves, and partner more deeply with their team of engineers in order to make kind of real suggestions and have a true understanding of what's going on with their product.
Do you have any advice for someone switching careers and how to use their previous experience as leverage?
Yes, I love this question. I love this question because most Flatiron School students are switching careers, and most Flatiron School students do not have any previous experience in software engineering, and so it's up to us in partnership with them and vice versa to figure out how to do that. So we've had a bunch of experience doing this. I think, if you're considering a career switch, or if you're considering how to position yourself having recently acquired these skills, one thing to really keep in mind is employers value your past experience. Going into the job market as a new engineer with not kind of a non-traditional background means that the folks with traditional backgrounds don't have work experience and usually have a lot of the same educational experience in their previous life. And so what you can bring to the table is really, hey, I can be additive on your team. You run a music company, guess what? I used to be a musician. You need your team of engineers is getting kind of big. Well, I was a project manager in my former life, and I have lots of experience communicating the right information and writing robust documentation. So I can help with that even as I'm delivering value in my kind of core function as an engineer. So a lot of the work that we do on the career services team is to help students kind of craft their narrative around what they want to convey and about their previous career and why that's relevant to their current career. And that'll differ a lot for every single student depending upon your previous experience and how you got here. But I would just say, know that employers value that experience and find a way to work it in, because it's nothing to hide. It's something to be very proud of, and actually spotlight why it's valuable in your new job. I'm going to say one more thing before the next question. Another thing to note here is, as far as demonstrating to employers that you can do the job, it's up to you. It's your responsibility, and you have the freedom to craft your job search collateral in the way that best serves your goals. For students at Flatiron School, that means we take the regular resume format and just throw it out the window, because most of our grads don't have software engineering experience, and if they presented a resume to a hiring manager that only said stuff about their last job as a marketer and nothing about the work that they've done to learn engineering, that's a confusing story for the hiring manager, right? Like, you haven't connected the dots for them about why you'd be a good fit for this job. So what a Flatiron School grad's resume looks like is 50% education, previous job experience, what I did and my accomplishments at my last employers, and a full 50% is just the technical projects that they worked on while they were a student, and the details of those with links to deployed applications, great code on GitHub, and video demos. So part of telling that narrative in a way that makes sense for your new job search as a career changer is really being thoughtful about the collateral that you're building and what you're presenting to an employer. And again, know that you have the freedom to make that set of materials in a way that best serves your goals.
So we're getting a lot of questions about the technical portion of the interview. Do you have any thoughts as far as like dealing with a question maybe you don't know the answer to, or anything in that regard?
Yeah, we hear over and over again from employers that what they're really trying to figure out in the technical interview is, can you do the job? Are you good to work with? And can you learn fast? And that should actually take a lot of pressure off for a lot of people around the technical interview, which is to say, what employers really want from that portion of the program, mostly, almost always, not always, but almost always, is not for you to solve the problem perfectly. What they're really looking for is enough grasp of the material that they know and are, can be confident that you can do the job, um, and an experience of interacting with you, and this is, nobody talks about this, but this is, we hear this from every single employer, an experience of discussing the problem and working through it together that is pleasant, non-confrontational, and displays humility on the part of the interviewee, which is to say, the worst way you can do a technical interview is to take the question, sit silently and struggle with it, and emerge 30 minutes later with an answer. Again, there will be exceptions to all of these rules, but by and large, what the employer really wants in the technical interview is for you to talk through the problem together and come to an understanding with the interviewer of what you're trying to accomplish, how you can get there together, know where you need help, and suggest possible solutions. The third part of this is, can you learn fast? And again, demonstrating that through a technical interview can be, you can do that in a whole bunch of ways. The goal is the journey, right? Like the destination is the journey in these interviews. And so proving that you can learn fast might mean you are presented with a problem you have no idea how to solve, never seen before, don't have any context, have no idea what they're talking about. If you can ask enough contextualizing questions to kind of get your arms around where you are and make a little bit of progress, a great way to follow up from that interview would be, hey, when you presented that question to me, I had never heard of that thing before. I had no idea what you were talking about, and I'm excited to have made a little bit of progress with you. I'm particularly excited to have made enough progress to now go home, reevaluate and interrogate the problem, and come up with a more robust solution that you see here. So again, technical interviews, can seem pretty scary because you have no idea what you're walking into, what questions are going to be asked, or what you're going to be asked to do. But take comfort in the fact that in those technical interviews, all employers want to know is, can you do the job? Are you a good person to work with? And can you learn fast? And try to demonstrate that through your solution of the problem, even if you can't get to kind of a perfect, elegant, whiz-bang resolution.
So do you have any ideas for building out a portfolio while on job seeking?
Yeah, so I think, again, as technologists, we're pretty lucky that it's a commonly understood thing to do to put your projects on GitHub, and that you have tools at your disposal to deploy an app and then send it over the internet to a hiring manager, right? Like as a salesperson, I'm not able to like send my sales portfolio as easily. So that's pretty cool. I would use that to your advantage and just go as crazy as you can about making your project awesome. I mentioned kind of the triple threat of clean code on GitHub, deployed working application, and video demo showing off your best features. I would do that as much as possible. Have working applications that employers can play with, make sure that they're live and that they work. And then again, demonstrate that you kind of know what you did by recording a demo of yourself talking about like the interesting facets of the problem. Some students have also kind of put together a robust documentation on GitHub about what this project is and how to deploy it yourself. Some students have continued blogging about the experience of iterating and improving upon their products. Students have chosen to build features in new languages to demonstrate, that they can learn, and also tricked out their application as kind of a positive side effect of that. So I think probably the biggest challenge with building something after you graduate is like scoping it down. And I would focus on having fewer, better documented, cleaner, more impressive projects than having more small things that are kind of maybe not as robust.
So do you have any tips for starting to build the network? How do you go about finding the email address, the phone number, like how to start contacting people?
Yeah, this is, I would say, the most common thing that we work on with students who are just starting their job search, as you might guess, is what do I do first to start building my network? And if you're already an online web developer program student, there's some great content about networking in the career prep track that you should check out. I do an hour-long talk on this sometimes, so I'm not going to be able to do it complete justice here, but networking is a combination of an art and a science. There's a way to do it well, absolutely, and we talk about that in the career prep track, but you'll also encounter kind of all kinds of unique situations that our students work through with their career counselor. I think the biggest takeaway for starting to build your network is, two things. One, aim to make real human connections with people. If nothing else, take away this. Go to places where people you want to meet are and talk to them. Show real interest in what they're doing. Ask them questions about themselves before you ask for something in return. And just try to make connections with people and try to, figure out who they are and what they're doing and what gets them excited. That's really the best way to start building your network out. And the second suggestion is, we think of networking in concentric circles, which is to say, you want to start with people that you're close with. If your aunt has a connection to the tech industry, sit her down and just pick her brain about kind of how, what is the tech industry and how do people communicate? And as you tap those really close contacts that will be friendly and excited to help you out no matter what you give them in return, you'll find yourself then being connected further and further out from your original network to people who might be closer to the tech industry if you're currently far away. So make real human connections with people and start close to you so that by the time you reach kind of outer concentric circles, you've had a bunch of conversations already and kind of have your feet wet on how to run these discussions.
Okay, so I think we just have 2 or 3 minutes left. So the last question is, why Flatiron School over other coding camps in New York City or in general?
I don't know. I think you have to ask yourself that. Things that are important to us are quality, rigor, and community. And if those are things that are important to you, then maybe this is the right place for you. But I think everyone needs to really decide for themselves why, what's the best fit for them. I can talk from my own experience about why I love it here so much. And that's really about the amazing community that we have. The students are so passionate. All the employees and instructors are genuine and excited about being here. And we have a real commitment to doing the right thing to get the students towards their goals. That might seem kind of like an obvious thing that should happen everywhere. For me, it's so stark that, all day, every day, our entire team is doing whatever we can, however we can, to help students meet their goals. And the students, in turn, are just awesome and positive and passionate, and I love being here as a result of that. I think that's it, but you should do more research for yourself for sure, and I'm happy to chat with whoever that is. Cool. So If you want to learn more about what we've just discussed, a lot of this information is in an ebook that you can find at nobrainertechhire.com. You can explore our outcomes reports and some information about our historical outcomes at outcomes.flatironschool.com. And keep an eye out from us for an email about scholarship opportunities. And thank you guys so much for coming. This was a pleasure.